Israel had just won the greatest military victory of their entire conquest. Jericho's walls had fallen flat. The city was theirs without a single Israelite casualty. Then they marched against Ai, a town so small the scouts said 3,600 men could take it. Israel sent 3,000. They lost. 36 men were dead, the army was routed, and Joshua tore his clothes and fell on his face in front of the ark, begging God to explain what had just happened. God's answer wasn't about strategy. It was about a single tent. One man named Achan had taken a beautiful Babylonian robe, some silver, and a bar of gold from the ruins of Jericho, things God had specifically marked as off-limits, and buried them under the floor of his own tent. He thought no one would ever know. The next morning, Joshua brought the whole nation forward, tribe by tribe, then family by family, then man by man, until the search narrowed down to one person. Achan finally admitted it himself. I saw among the spoil a beautiful robe and 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold. I coveted them and took them. They are hidden in the earth inside my tent. They dug up his tent floor and found exactly what he said would be there. 36 men paid for that hiding spot with their lives, and Achan paid with his own. That story raises an uncomfortable question. What if some of what's sitting in your own home right now isn't just clutter? What if it's the modern version of Achan's tent floor? Scripture doesn't just warn about what you worship out in public. It gives specific, repeated instructions about what you're not supposed to keep under your own roof. Here are 6 things the Bible directly warns you never to bring into your home. Number 1. Carved images and idols. This isn't vague. Deuteronomy gives the command in the plainest language possible. The carved images of their gods you shall burn with fire. You shall not covet the silver or gold that is on them, nor take it for yourselves, lest you be ensnared by it, for it is an abomination to the Lord your God. Nor shall you bring an abomination into your house. Number 2, anything under a curse or devoted to destruction. This is Achan's exact mistake. When Jericho fell, God declared everything in the city devoted, meaning it belonged to him alone, and Israel wasn't permitted to take any of it home as loot. Joshua chapter 7 tells us Achan looked at that robe, that silver, that gold, and later admitted, I coveted them and took them. He buried them inside his own tent. The text is specific about where. Not in a field, not in a market. Inside his own household, the very place he thought was safest turned out to be the reason an entire family was destroyed. Number 3, tools of divination and sorcery. Deuteronomy again is direct. There shall not be found among you anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or one who casts spells, or a medium, or a necromancer, or one who inquires of the dead. That's not one vague category. That's a whole list, named one at a time, because these weren't abstract warnings against a belief system. They were warnings against specific practiced tools and objects used to look for hidden knowledge outside of God. Israel's neighbors kept these items in their homes constantly, using them the same casual way you'd check a weather forecast. God told his people not to, because the real issue was never the object's accuracy. It was where you were choosing to look for answers instead of him. Number 4, foreign gods and the jewelry connected to them. Genesis 35 gives us one of the clearest household clean-out scenes in the entire Bible. Jacob tells his family, put away the foreign gods that are among you and purify yourselves and change your garments. His household didn't just hand over statues, they handed over their earrings too, jewelry apparently tied to idol worship in that culture. Jacob buried all of it under a tree before he would let his family move forward. He didn't sell it, he didn't repurpose it, He removed it completely. Number 5. Books and scrolls connected to magic and witchcraft. This one shows up in the New Testament, long after Israel's earliest days. Acts 19 describes new believers in Ephesus who had genuinely practiced magic. Once they came to faith, they didn't quietly keep their old material on a shelf just in case. They gathered their books publicly and burned them. Luke tells us the value came to 50,000 pieces of silver. That's not a small collection. That's years of accumulated material, destroyed on purpose, in public, at real financial cost. Number 6. Stolen household idols. Genesis 31 tells the story of Rachel, who took her father Laban's household gods without telling her husband Jacob. When Laban searched the entire camp for them, tent by tent, Rachel hid them inside a camel saddle and sat on top of it, telling her own father she couldn't stand up because she was on her period. Laban believed her and moved on. The idols stayed hidden, and on the surface it looks like Rachel got away with it completely. But notice what they cost her family in the process. Deception between a daughter and her father. Real tension between Jacob and Laban that nearly turned violent just a few verses earlier. An object small enough to sit on and hide under a blanket, and it still created a rift that shaped the rest of the story. Look at what all 6 of these actually have in common. None of them are described as merely unfortunate decorating choices. Scripture treats them as things that attach themselves to a household and quietly change what happens inside it. Achan didn't think a robe would cost 36 lives. Rachel probably didn't think a small idol was worth a family conflict. The danger was never really about the size of the object. It was about what the object represented and what it was still connected to. So what does this actually mean for you, standing in your own home today? You're probably not tempted to bring home a carved statue of Baal, but ask yourself honestly what else might be quietly doing the same job. An object tied to a practice you know isn't right. Something you keep out of habit or nostalgia or because getting rid of it feels dramatic. Something you'd be uncomfortable explaining if someone asked why it's still there. The test Scripture keeps applying isn't, is this a big deal? It's, does this belong here at all? Notice something else about every single one of these 6 examples. Nobody in these stories thought they were doing something catastrophic. Achan just wanted a nice robe. Rachel just wanted to keep something familiar from her father's house. None of them sat down and decided to bring disaster into their home on purpose. That's exactly why the warning had to be so specific in the first place. If the danger were obvious, God wouldn't have needed to spell it out item by item, generation after generation, from Deuteronomy all the way to the book of Acts. Achan hid his stolen items under a tent floor and assumed the ground would keep his secret. It didn't. Whatever you're keeping hidden in your own home isn't hidden from God either. The question was never whether he'd find out. The question is whether you'll deal with it before he has to.